one of the most powerful things I got to do in this role was attend ASAA, the American Association conference.
Right.
Thousands of district leaders gathered in a room. And very similar problems, slightly different, American education, but very similar issues, similar solutions, lots of brilliant minds. Boy, did I feel like, hey, I can lean in here and do a better job and support my kids even better, because there are people all over this continent who are facing some of these issues. Some are political, some are, very practical. And I think that's the advantage, for me anyway,
Yeah.
of being involved in CASA. And then it's about pay
Well,
it forward, just that whole pay it
yeah.
forward thing. People have helped me, given me ideas, and you pay it forward.
So after a couple of weeks hiatus, we're back with another episode of the Canadian Ed Leadership Show. And as you heard, today I'm talking with Superintendent Kevin Kaardal of Central Okanagan School District in Kelowna, British Columbia. Kevin is someone that I've known now for several years, and as you'll hear in the first few minutes of our conversation, we share a love of golf, and he and I talk a lot about the nerdiness that comes with being a golfer, and all that it brings to us, besides just playing the game, but the importance of it as a mental health and wellness vice, if you will. But beyond that, Kevin is always intrigues me. It had intrigued me, the number of committees and things that he served on, and our paths have also crossed in that capacity as well. And so it was important for me to sit down with Kevin and try to understand what is the value of being involved in all of these different committees. Because as a superintendent, he's a busy guy. He's got a lot of things on the go, and so he's very careful, as he explains, which organizations he chooses to participate in, but more importantly, shares in really interesting detail and specificity why it's such an important part of his work. And so I really enjoyed this conversation with Kevin. He's, again, an outstanding leader. Their district is revered in many ways across not only British Columbia, but certainly Canada and beyond. So it's a great place to live. If you've never been to Kelowna, you could appreciate its beauty and why it's one of the most desired places to live in Canada. But also the quality of people in the school district is also very, very telling as to Kevin's leadership and the great people that work there. So again, this podcast is brought to you by Advanced Learning Partnerships. We serve communities across the continent, and this is just one way in which we highlight the work of great people that we work with and are associated with, and it's our pleasure to do so. And so enjoy my conversation with Kevin Kaardal. Well, hey, Kevin, it's great that you've joined me. I know you're a busy person. You live in a beautiful part of Canada, I must say, and oftentimes I'm jealous, especially when you post things like you're golfing in March or in late November, which that doesn't happen. But I hope again hope you're doing well, anyways, at this day and enjoying a little bit of time on the golf course, even as a busy superintendent. So let me just ask you that, what do you what is the role of golf sort of just play in terms of your well-being, and how it may or may not even relate to the work that you do?
Well, a couple of things. One, it gives you, if I play twice a week or 3 times a week or whatever I can manage, sometimes it's only in the evenings for a couple hours. It gets you away from the many, 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 things you have to worry about, or concerns or strategies that you're implementing in terms of running a district with 4,250 employees and 24,500 kids and their families. And you're out in nature and you're walking around. I mean, yeah, it's manicured nature. helps. I have maybe a little bit of OCD, so that really helps me feel even more relaxed. And I'm usually with people that aren't in my profession.
Yeah.
And so as a result, we don't talk work. We talk
Yeah.
about the world. We talk about what we're doing. Um, and mostly we just chat a little bit about golf and have a good laugh. So
Well, and
um,
that's, it's such a good
quite
modeling
enjoyable.
for us, such good modeling for leaders to show that to, because as you know, we're well-being's a big deal. It always has been. It seems like more. So I think the more you can model the way in which you, and I mean, obviously not everybody's going to find golf the vehicle to do that, but as you mentioned, the fact that you're outside, you're talking with other people unrelated, like so many just really good aspects. Besides, it's just a really good game.
I really enjoy the strategy in it. So that's
Well,
every shot is different. So
you and I have that in common. We enjoy that together. But I wanted to, and it's kind of actually a nice segue into one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because I know you're involved with a lot of organizations, educational organizations specifically, that I think you're executive director in some, or you're president in some. You've been involved in a lot of organizations. Like maybe just for now, tell us some of those organizations that that you are connected to and related to that support your work as superintendent.
yeah. So currently, I'm president of the Canadian Association for School System Administrators. Previously, I'd been on the board and did work for just over a decade with the BCSSA, and I was president for one term there. I sit on, I'll just do some of the bigger ones, the EdCan Advisory Council. I was the Rapid Response Team co-chair for Interior Health for the pandemic for our region. And I sat on a number of advisory committees with government in my role as president of BCSSA around their response in British Columbia to the pandemic. I sit on the College Board of Canada's Advisory Council, and I'm currently also advising on a Canadian nature education strategy. So those are some of the things I'm involved with. At the moment, I'm also a director with Basketball BC and have been an advisor to some universities' education faculties, including SFU City University. And I meet quite regularly. It's a little committee of our own with the vice chancellor and principal from UBCO, or vice president who runs UBCO here, and the president of Okanagan College. And we look at joint interests and how we can support education in the valley.
So I mean, that's a pretty wide range of organizations to participate in, and you know, uh, it's not like you aren't busy enough in in the job that you're doing. So in order for you to give of your time to those other organizations, you must see a lot of benefit uh, to that, that comes back to you personally, but probably more importantly to the district at large. Like how do you sort of see that as being like your participation in those organizations benefiting back to the community that you serve?
Well, a lot of it is that you end up connecting with other exceptional people and leaders, and that informs your own practice. You pick up ideas, and you're able to lean into people in the midst of something that's new, and maybe they've experienced it. I can think of on the national level during the pandemic, we had an issue that we were facing. Our board was giving me some direction on, and I was able to reach out to a director in Ontario who had been through the whole process and had created, a really solid professional process to manage that issue. And we didn't use it exactly, but it sure helped me get me started. And so
Sure.
there's those very specific practical things, but there's also the networking and connection. If you pay it forward, if you do some service, oftentimes people will provide support and service for you, and you're trying to move an important agenda forward for your school district, your community, and they'll be very helpful because you've been helpful to them. So there's a little bit of that, you know, um, collaboration, collective quid pro quo, if you want to say. But it's really about lots of people help me, and so I have an interest when someone asks, and if it's not too much of a commitment, and when I'm honest, I mean, I'm on some other committees in the province. If I can't make it, because you have to prioritize the work that you do in the district first. That's my number one priority, and if that's and the work I do with my board, if that's impacting that time, then that takes priority, and we get to the other things when we can fit them in.
Uh, I noticed, you mentioned EdCan, which you and I both have been part of over the years. Uh, but CASA in particular, I mean, one of the things that maybe, especially our American counterparts, don't understand is that Canada doesn't have a national education branch within that's government supporting that. So we tend to work very autonomously as provinces, right? So I know you're on a number of provincial committees, which that certainly has value. But what about this, like, because this is where I think there's a lot of our educators who have no connections to organizations or people outside of their province because the structure of education doesn't naturally allow for that. So an organization like CASA, for example, why is that one and others that have more of a broader representation of Canadians so important and maybe differ from the way in which you interact with your in those provincial committees?
Yeah. So for me, for CASA, it's because it's inclusive. It's not a group that you need to get an invitation to join. It doesn't have a set agenda around some of those groups, and I won't mention what they are, but they all serve a good purpose, and some of my colleagues certainly sit on those within those national organizations. But I think in the end, the benefit is the same. So in CASA, you have executive directors from uh, that represent every province from the provincial associations and every territory, so from coast to coast to coast now. It wasn't always that way, but it is now. That's been one of our big goals. And then we offer professional learning and a voice at the national table where appropriate in Canada um, on issues that can be federally influenced. So, for example, nature based education may be one of those things, if I bring it back to the board, I'm involved now, that might be of interest to our CASA members. When we think of all the work that's happening provincially, very similarly around, say, social justice issues, anti racism, truth and reconciliation, inclusion, those are critical issues, equity, all the things that we're trying to do to make sure kids feel safe, ready to learn, and then can navigate sort of their own learning as with agency in our school systems across the country. Um, and I think we mental health has been a big one for CASA. Again, wellness, and so we're involved in some of that work. We're supporting some of the work that's happening for Indigenous school and district administrators, supporting that journey towards truth and reconciliation. So on some of those national issues, we can get a voice, and French immersion, recruitment of teachers, those kinds of things that can support what's happening in provinces. And during the pandemic, we were able to be a national voice with the National School Boards, Canadian School Boards Association, directly to governments to say, how do we navigate something that is new to us, that um, has significant health risks, and from a whole bunch of aspects, including um, equity and access, and people's health, and how every provincial government responded differently, and that information sharing, I think, has a real benefit back to local situations for any member who chooses to engage. And if your association is a part of the um, group, uh, like say the Alberta School Superintendent Association (CAS), then you're a member. Like BCSSA chooses to be a member, so you're a member. For the most part, there are places where you have to join individually, but So it's a real advantage. And again, there are a whole bunch of very bright people who look at problems and don't always see the solution the same way. And so it expands my involvement expands my ability to think about things from different angles and bring that back to my own district and support it. And I gave you a very specific example where I was able to reach out to a colleague nationally who had
Right.
people in BC hadn't solved that, but somebody in Ontario had. And so that issue, it was, a huge advantage. The other thing is you're not alone. What's really interesting, we think our problems are our own, and they're not. And there are different solutions, and different provincial governments are approaching education differently. Some are very pro education, but have moved to really strong social justice agendas, like in British Columbia, and they're funding those supports. We're now receiving funding to feed kids, which is not, we've done that sort of off the sides of our desks through charitable organizations. It was something we knew we needed to do in a district, let's say our size, might feed 2,000 kids a week, but we had to figure out how to find and fund that. Now governments come to the table with money, and that's really exciting. Well, that might not be happening in Saskatchewan, but
Right.
leaders there can then point to British Columbia because they've heard it, at our meetings, and they can say, by the way, this is happening in BC. This is a good thing. Or we hear of a concern in a province and we can lend our voice about, if we really want to improve education and lift all boats, right? Raise that tide about the excellence. And Canada's a high performer in the OECD tests and measures that they use, but just generally preparing our kids to thrive holistically in this complex global world we live in, then we can share that support with each other. And you're not alone. One of the most powerful things I got to do in this role was attend ASAA, the American Association conference.
Right.
Thousands of district leaders gathered in a room. And very similar problems, slightly different, American education, but very similar issues, similar solutions, lots of brilliant minds. Boy, did I feel like, hey, I can lean in here and do a better job and support my kids even better because there are people all over this continent who are facing some of these issues. Some are political, some are, very practical. And I think that's the advantage, for me anyway,
Yeah.
of being involved in CASA. And then it's about pay
Well,
it forward. Just that whole pay it
yeah.
forward thing. People have helped me, given me ideas, and you pay it forward.
Well, and I mean, I think what you address, you're talking from a superintendent's perspective, but I mean, the reality of it is there is not many professions that are as isolating as teaching. And
True.
classroom teachers classroom teachers are thirsty for opportunities to connect with their colleagues and find out how a grade 2 teacher from another school or another district or another province are addressing the similar things. And you're just saying, as a superintendent, that that's still an issue, right? You're the only superintendent in central Okanagan, and I mean, yes, you have assistants, and I know you have a great team that you work for, but there's still things that kind of really only pertain to you. So to be able to connect with other leaders in the same position has got to be, a very, very powerful and an important part of what we do. I mean, as great as it is to work with great people in your district, there's still a limitation. You see things the way you see things, right? You don't see things the way others do. So that I mean, I know I'm speaking because I've just been able to hang out with people like you and your team, but I get to hang out with people in Ontario and Alberta and in the US as well. So yeah, I love what you're saying, and I think, I don't know, if sometimes I worry that maybe leaders can get so busy that they don't make the time to connect with, because it's an effort that you have to have. I mean, you have to get on a plane to go somewhere, or you got to do whatever. Like, it didn't just happen in your back door. So, but you're saying it's worth it though.
Well, I really believe it is, and I can give you practical examples. So, and it's not just me. I actually, when I come to districts, encourage my teams to join the provincial association, to connect with curricular leadership organizations, to visit other schools in our province that are doing amazing things, or lab schools in Ontario. I had just had a team that joined me out for the College Board National Forum. And we were looking at different pathways to post-secondary, which is, I kind of break education down into you're ready to learn, then you are learning those, core skills and competencies. I don't want to lose competency-based because former colleagues were brilliant in moving that forward in British Columbia, competency-based education. And then you're applying those competencies, and then eventually you're applying them to transition to post-secondary in the world of work or whatever you're doing. And people have been solving those problems in districts in innovative ways. There's lighthouses all over the place. And in our district, we're very fortunate. We've got a team. Our learning has improved dramatically. I'd like to say since I came here, and that's probably true because that's a focus, but that's just because I view my job as a coach. And I'm a former basketball coach, and I kind of see putting teams together, very talented people, and that's maybe part of the talent they bring, and then setting them loose in a common direction. Once we had a strategic plan in the district, we didn't have that. That set the district, direction, and then it became a more collaborative strategic plan, more aspirational. And they'll say they're on fire, but it's not because I'm saying to them, "Oh, go do this." It's because their talent, their expertise is telling them, "I need to go do this," and I've been given permission to connect with other people who are doing this really good work, and we've seen with evidence that it works. And so, for example, our team came to talk about transitions. We were connected with Okanagan College sent a senior leader, and UBCO sent a senior leader to this forum with 180 or so people from that represented about half the student population across Canada, just trying to explore better ways to get more kids into post-secondary. So that was the broad set. But I had a team that was integrated because of relationships that we built with the leaders in those organizations. And so they prioritized it for their teams to come. Meanwhile, my assistant superintendent took his team a couple days early to go visit a lab school that does some very similar work in Ontario that we're doing here around creating learning communities within schools that aren't really graded. They're actually just, here's your community. It might be grades in middle school right now, 5, 6, 7, right? And, 6, 7, 8, sorry. And they're not graded, but you're in that community. And there's multiple entry points to the work, the competencies you have to learn. And they went to another school that was doing that same work, and they're able to compare notes, compare how they're working with the instructional core, and it becomes very deliberate. They bring that back, right? And then they share that. So they're sharing what they're learning with the rest of the team. And we do something in our district called a symposium, just started it in the last couple of years. And that symposium, again, is our leaders, teacher leaders, and everyone sharing with each other best practice or wise practice around these communities of learning, cultures of inquiry, things that we believe, excellent assessment for as of learning, that we believe are going to move the agenda forward. And it's been successful. When I got here, high performing district, I think we were around 88% graduation rate. We're now at 96. In 2000, early 2000s, I think they had a 31, 35% graduation rate for Indigenous students. We're at 86% and 100% on reserve. So with our WFN. So we have a committed team of people that are working hard to make things work, but they're also connecting with other lighthouses, both in Canada, British Columbia, and around the world. And conversely, we then open our doors for others to come and see what we're doing. And that synergy, and sometimes dissonance because people do things differently, helps keep driving the innovation in our district. And as a coach, I just have to make sure that it stays sort of within the, as Senge would say, sort of within that broad ocean liners direction, that we're going to really make sure students can thrive holistically. That's our goal. And that we're going to do it together and collaboratively. If I see something that's too far off to the left, and as a superintendent, I come in with an inquiry and see how we can connect that energy, because you don't want to crush energy and get it back on side. And so the most recent group I joined was this national consortium that's really looking at Canadian nature education. I was invited to join, and I thought, okay, do I have the time? And they explained what the time commitment was. And it's my view that we're doing a lot of really good work and just starting in it around social justice issues in Canada, which create that ready to learn place, right? That safety, so kids can learn, they see their identity, they're honored in the school, and we are meeting them in it where they're at, and making sure that each learner can thrive. But there's another piece. The environmental issues we're facing right now are significant, and we need to build hope that our young, because there's a lot of mental anxiety around that, that our young people can make a difference, because we've not done the best job as people in our 50s and 60s uh, addressing that. We're starting that journey, but we really haven't tried to address it. So how do we create an education stream that's integrated throughout? Yeah, we've got environmental studies within our curricula, but it's not maybe got the level of importance it needs, and the right direction or the right vision to make sure that it provides young people with the idea that as critical and creative thinkers who understand the competencies around science, environment, and all that stuff, that they have hope to resolve these issues and have a place to live 50 years from now, 100 years from now. You know, I saw something recently about carbon capture plants and stuff. That's one small solution, but because you'd have to have millions of those plants to deal with what much carbon we're putting out in the air. But nonetheless, that's creativity and hope, right? And there are other solutions out there as we move forward. And I think it's missing from Canadian education right now, other than on the East Coast, I understand New Brunswick or maybe Newfoundland, just set that forward as one of their curricula they're going to look at. And again, that's another national connection. I don't have to start fresh. I can, connect with that leader and who I was just at a couple day event with, and with that relationship, bring it to BC.
Well, Kevin, you just basically personified all the things I say about my friends in British Columbia, and why I hold all of you up in such esteem is because you are all very proud of the work you do, and know that you're doing good work, but you're not stopping there. You're always looking for, well, what else could we be doing, and who else is doing interesting and meaningful work that maybe we aren't. And that takes, there's a degree of humility that has to occur to do that, and I don't always see that in leaders. Sometimes I feel like leaders always are presenting a posture like we're the best, and we're, like we're, we can figure it out ourselves. We have so many good people internally, and sure, no one's going to argue that you have good people internally, but the fact that you are committed to learning from others and knowing that, like, hey, we don't have it all figured out. Like, there's lots of stuff that, and again, sometimes it's not just about capacity. It's about, that this, you talk about this environmental issue that somebody else decided it was a higher priority 2 years ago, and so they're just farther along their journey. And as you have identified the issue, it's like, well, like, why wouldn't we why wouldn't we talk to these folks? Like, well, I'm not too proud to say, hey. And then, as you said before, you're also wanting to pay it forward and give it back and saying, listen, if there's things you can learn from us, please come. So I just wanted to say, like, this is the theme that happens constantly when I talk to people in BC. You guys almost, it's like you're reading out of the same playbook. Sometimes it feels like I've heard this before, but I mean, I know it's genuine, and I don't necessarily see other leaders with quite that same disposition as you all share. So that's where I kind of put a bow on all of that to say thank you once again for your leadership in this area.
Well, again, that's, for me, that would have been the provincial association, and my mentor Sheila Rooney, who was president of BCSSA at one time, getting me involved, and then why I encourage our teams to get involved, because you meet incredible people. Some of them, and they're doing incredible things. So, I think of Chris Kennedy and as an early adopter to, managing, integrating technology into everyday lessons from the level he was at both a principal, eventually as a superintendent, and such a phenomenal presenter too. Just a plug to anyone out here who wants to get a great speaker. And he doesn't know that I would say that we're more acquaintances than friends, and we're good acquaintances. But when you meet people like that in our system, and people who had a vision around competency education, like a Rod Allen, or somebody like our executive director currently for the BCSSA, Claire Guy, who has gotten so many people involved to share, right? That abundance mentality, we're going to share, small district leaders to large district leaders. You end up in a place where you are like you are awed by the talent that's
Yeah.
around you. And then when you connect with these national organizations, um, you're even more awed because, yeah, there might be those leaders who think they're red apples, that they're finished ripe apples, but there are still a lot of, ripening people. I don't
Yeah.
actually, maybe that sounds wrong, but nonetheless, who are still learners, lifelong learners in every jurisdiction. And
Yeah.
every time you meet them, it's an absolute gift. So that's why I get involved in all this stuff, and then you pay some of it forward, and it feels good.
You bet. You bet. All right. I'm gonna let you go in a minute, but I got some more rapid fire questions to finish. I ask all my guests these questions. So the first question is, tell me about a book or a podcast that you are currently reading or listening to, or have just recently finished that you would recommend.
So I just finished a book called The Reality Bubble by Zia Tong, and it looks at both the small and the large, and our understanding of science on a whole bunch of issues that uh, should reframe many people's thinking about who we are and what is our own reality in the bubble that we live in. And some of it's very fascinating and exciting, and other pieces of it are actually quite frightening. And we have to do that work as humanity if we want to be here and solve some of those issues that we often try and keep hidden. And so I'll leave it there because I don't want to spoil the book, but
Oh, that
it's
sounds
looks at the very small all the way, and our makeup is basically stardust and quarks and atoms that are sentient and aware. Maybe some of us even self-aware. I strive for that, but I don't always achieve it. And then all the way to some of the big macro problems about
yeah.
our existence in the universe and the planet Earth and sustainability and all of those
Cool.
issues.
The Reality Bubble. I'll write it down. What about just for fun? Something you're watching, binging, or just saw a movie? Something maybe a little bit more. Well, it doesn't have to be lighter, I guess. But what anything
Well,
you're viewing?
I'll say three things. So I just finished. I'm watching the NBA championship starting tonight. I'm voting for Denver, even though I like that Miami's scrappy and an 8 seed, and they just kept upsetting people. I love that about sport, and I was very interested in the World Championships for hockey, and that Canada somehow eked out gold by the end against Germany, which when I was watching the game, and my wife walked in the room, Germany, and they had just scored the first goal of the
Right.
game. How the heck did they get there? And that made that pretty exciting. And then, of course, PGA golf. I found the PGA Championship very interesting and entertaining with all the pundits and all the
Right.
division that's going on there, and wonder if that'll um, maybe help mend some of the golf fences in the long run. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. There's lots of drama that it's almost like a little soap opera that lives outside of the world of golf. That's that you can sort of read all the back and forths that happen between various people on various sides of that. So that could be a little bit of entertaining kind of what's the word, reality TV, I guess. Even though sports itself, I suppose, is the ultimate reality TV. Now, Kelowna is known nationwide, worldwide, as being this really, really pretty idyllic place in Canada. And of course, if you Google it, you're going to go to a vineyard or all that. But besides the vineyards, the obvious, right? The things that everybody knows about. If I'm coming to Kelowna, like what's the thing you might say? You might not. This might not be in the top of the list, but you should really check out blank restaurant, sightseeing, whatever. What would be a place you would recommend in Kelowna that maybe wouldn't be as obvious as others?
Yeah, well, I would say the Harvest Golf and Country Club because you can book times. It's semi-private if that's your goal. And then the trails along Kalamalka Lake, which really opened up just a few years ago. You leave from Oyama and you go all
Okay.
along the lake right to Vernon. Very, very nice. And you can stop and dive in the lake. It's fantastic. And I am going to say a vineyard because there's lots of big vineyards everyone knows.
Right.
But there's a really terrific family-owned vineyard called Vibrant Vines. And there's 3D art in there that one of their sons produces. And it actually becomes the label on the wine or covers the whole wine bottle. You can use them later on. They have lights, you put them in. The wine's fairly decent. The whites are very good. One of them won this Whoops wine because they put the sleeve, the artwork up on upside down, and they sent it in full of wine. And it was really to an artwork or bottle artwork contest, they thought, at a worldwide thing. And then got entered in the wine contest and won best wine in the world about 10 years ago. And so it's a really nice light summer wine. And so I would say Vibrant Vines. They serve food. They do some other stuff there. It's a smaller vineyard, but just big enough to be entertaining. They have music there. It's not like going to Mission Hills or, Cedar Creek or all the big ones or everything down on the bench.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Kevin. I know you're a busy person as you weren't meaning to tell me how busy you were. I was asking questions that showed how busy you were, but I appreciate the time. Always enjoy our conversations, and we'll chat again soon.
That'd be great. And like I say, I appreciate the conversation. When you talk about connections that broaden your thinking and experience, well, you've been one of those for me. So, kudos to you and, that broad experience you've had connecting with people across North America and the work that you do. So keep up the great work and
appreciate it.
We'll see you on a golf course somewhere, hopefully soon.
Let's hope so.